Well, Shabbat Shalom and welcome. This is Torah study for a Shabbos, and I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein here in cloudy, rainy Southern California, joined today by my dear friend and teacher, Rabbi Mark Gelman of South Florida. Mark, hope you're feeling better, doing well.
Thanks for all your prayers.
We're
I'm
here.
working it. I'm working it.
I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad. Well, this week we opened Parshat Emor, and Parshat Emor is the very smack middle of of the book of Leviticus. And this book of Leviticus is the story of the tabernacle, the shrine, the Mishkan, the work of the priests in bringing sacrifices. The rules of the priest are given here. Priests are not allowed to attend funerals, for example, except for their closest family. This is a wonderful law if you think about where we came from. We came from Egypt, in which religion is always tied up with death. And here there is a specific prohibition keeping the priest away from the day to day contact with death in order to keep the priest focused on life. And among the very different kinds of laws and traditions here is a description again of it's a description once again of the holy accoutrements. And you have a wonderful word that you taught us once about the menorah.
It was taught to me by Nelson Glick, Oliver Sholem, the head of the Hebrew Union College, my teacher, man who convinced me to be a rabbi, head of the OSS during World War II, the model for Indiana Jones. Quite a man, an amazing man. And Nelson, one day when we were walking in the Judean desert, we were talking about the menorah, and he said about what it looked like and how the one of the oldest depictions of the menorah is on the Arch of Titus in Rome. But it doesn't seem as if, according to Rashi, that the shape of the menorah on the frieze on the ark was correct because it's curved and according to Maimonides and Rashi, the six stems went out up on an angle, and then there was a seventh in the middle. Now, you should understand, our students here, we're not talking about the Chanukiah here.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the Hanukkah menorah. This was the Temple menorah, and it had seven branches. And in traditional Orthodox synagogues, you are not allowed to depict any of the clay kodesh, any of the sacred objects of the old temple. So you were never allowed to have like a seven branched menorah on the wall or something. So the way they did it is they would do six. Sometimes they'd have six. But the menorah was interesting because all of the other objects in the temple, Ed, were tools. They were tools to do something. Like the Aron Kodesh was a tool to hold
The
the
covenant.
ark.
Yeah.
The altar was a tool to offer up sacrifices.
Hmm.
The laver was a tool to hold water for the priest to wash their face and their hands and their feet to purify themselves. The tables were tools to hold the showbread, the lechem panim. So everything up there was a tool except for the menorah.
Hmm.
The menorah was not put there to illuminate the the Beis Hamikdash. It was there for some other reason. And Nelson was teaching me this other reason. And he says there's a there was an old midrash that he knew that when Bezalel made it, he made the six. branches which come down and are affixed to the one perpendicular branch, he made them swivel, which makes sense because although the menorah, it says, was made out of a single piece of gold, it doesn't say it didn't have any moving parts. So Nelson's view was that it had moving parts and that the branches moved. And I said, Nelson, what, why? Why? And he says, that's for you to figure out. And that's the way he used to talk to me. And I figured it out. At least I figured it out for me.
Yeah.
And Nelson was already dead, so I couldn't check it out.
Oh.
But what I figured out is the menorah is God's challenge to humanity.
Huh.
We have a choice of how we swivel the branches of the menorah.
Yeah.
Do we look at the menorah and swivel the branches face on, so we have six and one is seven? Or do we swivel them this way so that you can only see one light with seven lights, with six lights behind it? And that to me opened up my entire life. It opened up everything because I realized if we look at the menorah sideways, we only see one light. And that's the choice we face with America and with the world. That's the choice we face with our families. It's a choice we face with everything, Ed. We can see everyone as divided. What Karl Marx said, to see in our neighbor the source of our limitation, not the source of our fulfillment.
Hmm.
We can look at, at, at the whole world as isolated monads, individuals on their own, coming out of the same stalk, maybe. Yeah, we're all made in the image of God, but we're on our own branch.
Hmm.
And there's nothing between our branch and your branch. And the best thing is to just stay on your branch. And the alternative is to see the world as a united community of creatures made in the image of God, each of whom sends out a light into the world based on their own abilities and passions and destinies. And by seeing the menorah as a single light, we see the world as a single collection of humanity. We see our families as single families, not as divided me and my crazy sister and my this and my that. It's and not as a country with immigrants and non-immigrants, but as a single community. And there's other rabbinic teachings about this that extend beyond the menorah, how we're all, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Lazeh, all of us are united one to another. But the main point is how we look at the menorah is the whole point of our religious life. If we don't look at the menorah edge on, our religion will just divide us from the world. And the menorah is a reminder to see the unity of all humanity
And it not just divide us from the world, but again,
from
so
each
so
other.
it yeah, that's even worse in the sense that, if you look at it as seven branches, and that's the way you choose to see the world. You choose to see distinctive lights and not the cumulative glow of the thing. And you see the Jewish people the same way. I mean, one of the crazy things about us, Mark, is there's 14 million of us in the world. And yet, we're so good at dividing.
I know.
We're so good at dividing. Rabbi Schulweis, my teacher, used to have a wonderful joke that he used to tell us. Two Jews are talking, and one Jew says, the whole world is divided between us and them. No use talking about them. Let's talk about us. And we're divided between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. Can't do nothing about Sephardim. Let's talk Ashkenazim, European Jews. And Ashkenazim, you can divide between Litvaks and Hasidim. Litvaks, who can do anything with them? Get rid of them. Let's talk Hasidim. And Hasidim, you can talk about Satmar and Lubavitch. Satmar, they're nuts. Let's talk Lubavitch. And Lubavitch, you can talk about those who go to the Farbrengen and those who don't go to Farbrengen. Well, those who don't go, they're not worth talking about. Let's talk about those who go. That's us. And in the Farbrengen, there are those who really know, and those who don't know that much, they're just listening. They're ignorant. They don't know nothing. That leaves you and me. And what do you know?
Great joke.
I mean, and that's a crazy. I mean, that's what we
But
do.
that's it.
That's what we do.
That's exactly right.
So this choice, the first thing I think is brilliant and beautiful about your gloss on Nelson Glick's drush was that the accoutrements of the Mishkan, the furniture, the holy furniture of the shrine of
Clay
ancient
coated.
Israel, Clay Kodesh, they're all symbols. It is a language of symbolism. And we have to take it as a language of symbolism and ask what is it trying to say to us? In this Torah portion, in the last Aliyah, the seventh Aliyah, there's this long discussion about the menorah. And one of the things that's amazing, I think, is this idea of light. That the religion chooses light as its symbol. And I've always been interested in why light. The Shacharit service and the morning prayer service is this whole meditation about light, right? Yotzer or uvore choshech, oseh shalom uvrei hakol. God who creates light.
That's Isaiah.
Because light is so interesting. Because first of all,
Torah aura.
you can divide light, right? You have a candle and you light another candle, it doesn't diminish the first candle. It's like, in a certain way, light is not quantitative, it's more qualitative. And really, the interesting thing about light is no one knows what the hell it is. It's
Right. Even Einstein didn't know.
right, whether it's a particle, whether it's a wave, whether it's a function of electromagnetic energy. Einstein basically says, well, the one thing we know for sure is there's light, and light goes this speed, and everything is relative to that, right? So it's this mysterious thing. And then, of course, you can't really see light. You see what light shines on, which I think is a beautiful metaphor for divinity, right? You
Right.
don't see God, you see what God shines on, as it were, what God affects.
Beautiful.
So these are
Beautiful.
all, that's why light becomes this image. And what you've added to us is this beautiful idea. So we have this candelabrum, this menorah, and what it's trying to ask us is, are you more concerned about dividing and dividing and dividing? Or do you have the wisdom to really understand the word echad, oneness, which is, I think, the most important word in the whole faith? Because that's what God was after in the beginning. When God creates a world, it's a world of oneness. And then we go around chopping it into pieces, into nations and peoples and ideologies and races and economics and the menorah comes back and says, no, no, don't look at it that way. Turn it. And what do you see? You see one incredibly bright light. It's a wonderful image. It's a
It
really
is.
wonderful image. And I think it's a very apt image. It's a very important moment for this. It's a very important message for this moment.
There's another light image that I love in the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah where they talk about lighting the lights of Rosh Hashanah from the temple to Sartabad or Gorfina, and they talk about the different mountain peaks, each of which had a viewing point, would see the light for the new year from the temple, and then light a light, and it would go all throughout the diaspora. And they say it was, and they would raise the light up and down, and they said until the entire diaspora seemed as if it was a single light.
Hmm.
And that is such a beautiful image that out of Jerusalem, we have a light that eventually ignites the entire diaspora.
Yeah. So let me just let me back up just a second. So the Jewish ritual calendar is a lunar calendar. We,
Well,
we, we
modified lunar,
we
yeah.
base it, yeah, we base it on the moon. Lunar cycles are 29 and a half days long, which means that some months are 29 days long and some months are 30 days long, right?
They
And
got to
so
get 11 days to equal the
yeah,
solar.
you end up with that. But so what happens is the way they did it in ancient times is they would have these two guys who would stand on the walls of the holy temple, and when the moon came out, if there was a full moon if there was a partial moon that night, that was the beginning of the new month. But if
Yeah,
there was no moon that night, you knew that it started the next night. And the way that they did this, they verified it by what they saw, and they would light a signal flare. And that's what Mark is describing. The rabbi is describing is a whole series of a series of signal flares that went from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop, all the way to Iraq, all the way to Babylon, right? And so at this one point, when they saw the new moon, they would light the flares, and you'd see these lights as far as the eye can see, which is a beautiful metaphor for the idea that from Jerusalem goes this light. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. From Jerusalem goes this light of Torah all through the world. All through the world. The whole world now is illuminated by the light of Jerusalem and the message that the new month has begun.
that's it.
And that's how it works. And this idea, again, as light as a metaphor. So how else is light used as a metaphor?
Well, illumination and wisdom, Torah, aura.
Right.
Light is what guides your path and teaches you which way to go on the path. So light it's a way of illuminating the path of life.
And so there's a tradition that any building can be a synagogue as long as it has three qualities. The first one is it has to face east because that's Jerusalem. The second one is it has to have a space, a niche for Torah. And the third one is the one you wouldn't expect. The third one is a synagogue has to have a window.
Yes.
Why a window? And there's a big argument about why a window. On one level, it's so that the light of the world can come in, and not just the light of the world, but that the window opens up the synagogue to the world, so that a synagogue is not a retreat from the world. It's a place where we can look out upon the world with new eyes and see what we couldn't see before. And the second part is even better, which is that the light of the synagogue, which is the light of Jerusalem,
Goes out.
goes out into the world, and that anyone passing by can see that this is a place of wisdom and morality and faith. And that so light then becomes that metaphor once again.
Beautiful. And let me add to that the commandment, Isaiah's commandment that we should be a or lagoyim.
Yeah.
We should be a light to the nations. So it's interesting. Why doesn't it say orot lagoyim?
Ah.
Obviously, there's a bunch of us. No, it doesn't say that. It says or lagoyim. It means we should be a single light.
Hmm.
It means no matter what divisions we have internally, our belief in God, our expression of the joy of being Jewish and of the wisdom of Judaism should be a unified message to the world. A unified message to the world, and that's one single light.
Hmm.
You know, neither of us are Chabad, and in our weaker moments, maybe we have some disagreements with what they do, but I'm not bringing that up. What I'm saying in praise of what Chabad has done, which is clearly the most successful Jewish enterprise of our time, I mean, really, there's no, there's really no question about it. What Chabad has done is basically said, "You're Jewish, come on in. You're Jewish, come on in." And that is an enormously welcoming message. And its presence in the world is not We represent Chabad and you don't. It's we're Jewish and we're all Jewish. It was, and that idea that we should be a unified presence in the world is really, I think, the reason for their success.
That's very lovely. Yeah, that's very lovely. Of course, the most proximate light is Shabbos candles, right?
Indeed. And
And
that, by the way,
was
in
one
this,
of Chabad's things. Yeah.
it starts, there's two lists. One is all Shabbos, and then the second is all the other holidays.
So Shabbos candles. I just for a moment, I think that once upon a time the idea was to fill your room with light so that it wasn't dark. But they do something more now. They do something quite remarkable. First of all, the act of lighting Shabbos candles changes a home, and I've
I
seen this.
completely agree.
I've seen this change people's whole lives. Just the
Yes.
act, the simple. You start by lighting. I remember we did a Chabad number once here at VBS. We took two Shabbos candles with a ribbon around it and a little booklet on how to light Shabbos candles, and we gave out Shabbos candles to all of the nursery school families as they came in for carpool one Friday morning.
Oh, that's great.
And I remember I'm standing out here passing out candles, and mostly mommies, right? Some of the women say, "No, Rabbi, I like candles. I have plenty of candles at home." And others of them say, "I've never done that. Can you show me how to do it?" And I hand them the thing. And then I remember this one particular mom, she has a baby carriage and she has a little toddler she's carrying. And she says, "Oh, no, I don't need those candles. My mother lights the candles." And then she stops and looks at the kid in the baby carriage and the kid she's holding. She says, "Oh, I guess I'm a mother now. I guess I do need them." It was
Wow.
just a
Wow.
wonderful moment. And in my life, they have a very particular thing. My mother was a kibbutznik, and she was a rebellious person, and she claimed to be a non-believer, right?
However,
Yes, but my family made Shabbos every Friday night. You had to be at the table 6:30, and
yeah.
my mother would start the meal, and she had three candles. She had two candles for us and a candle for her mother, for her grandma, my grandmother who passed away, and she'd put a shmata over her face, and she'd light the candles, and she'd pray. And once when I was a pain in the ass 15-year-old, I said to her, "Mom, you claim to be a non-believer. Who are you praying to?" And she looked at me with a look, boy. Ooh, the look was, it's not that I don't believe, it's that I'm angry at God for what he did to us in the Shoah, in the Holocaust. And it was a chill because I realized that she's deeply religious
Oh,
because
yeah.
there was a moment of cosmic communion between my mother and the Lord, right? And she prayed for us. She prayed for my dad. She prayed for her father, who was still living at the time. I mean, it was really a moment of cosmic communion.
That's
And
beautiful.
and I see that I see that even now. I have a granddaughter who's 3 years old, and we light candles together on FaceTime because she's in Arizona and I'm here, and she gets it. She really knows this is a moment of true sanctity and holiness, and the candles are the vehicle of that, the symbol and the vehicle of that.
No question.
So
Those
this
are beautiful, beautiful stories.
this is the so this week when we read this section, it's all these different adumbrations of life, all these different articulations of the symbolism of light. And we'll go back to the beginning, Mark. So Nelson Glick's beautiful observation and your wonderful drush on turning the menorah so we see one unified, bright, glowing light that fills the world instead of multiples. I think that's a beautiful way to think about this week. Let's have
Thank
a week of unity and a week of health and a week of strength. Take care,
Amen,
everyone.
amen.
A good Shabbos and more.